Slowly, the stream of pure Dhamma swelled into a mighty river. From 1969 to 1975, 122 Vipassana courses were held across 11 Indian states and 37 towns and cities. Dhamma's flow was now unstoppable.
It is true that when I came here, besides my family member, I made a list whom I know here to send them information that I am here now, I am going to give a course. The number did not reach 100. It was just two-figure number. And now, as I keep on saying, mere to do haath, dharam ke hazaron haath. I got only two hands. Dhamma has got thousands of hands. All these thousands of hands, they are working. It spreads. Yahi pasiko. When somebody tastes this, naturally starts helping others.
Sayaji U Ba Khin had foreseen the need of a permanent dwelling of Dhamma much earlier. The time to find that place had ripened. Land near Igatpuri was finalized. The priceless jewel of Dhamma found a casket, Dhammagiri.
Not that we chose Igatpuri. Igatpuri chose us. I remember after giving my first course in Bombay, I went to Madras, so I went through Nagpur. Train stops before the station due to some reason for 10-15 minutes, and it was the month of July or so, and these big waterfalls here. I was so fascinated. Oh, if a center comes in a place like this, wonderful. After 1 year, it so happened that in month of June or July, I came here for a course, and I see the same waterfall. Oh, this place I have seen. Oh, this was the place chosen.
At the time of its acquisition in January 1974, Dhammagiri consisted merely of 3 or 4 old bungalows. A lot of efforts were needed to make the place inhabitable. To do that, in addition to the physical effort, Goenkaji's message to those early Dhamma servers was very simple. Meditate, meditate, meditate.
काफ़ी वेस्टर्नर्स कुछ आ गए, वो आकर के वहाँ रहने लगे, तो उन्होंने एक और अच्छी बात क्या की कि एक जना वहाँ पर 10 दिन का स्वयं शिविर करे। रिले में 10 दिन का शिविर हो गए, मैंने डे 1 से वहाँ ध्यान शुरू हो गया।
The first official course of 4 days was arranged for old students in May 1975. This was attended by 76 students in very basic accommodation. Soon thereafter, a 10-day course was organized, beginning October 27, 1976, attended by 89 students. After that, regular courses started at Dhammagiri. Today, this center serves up to 700 students in a course. As Dhammagiri was getting established in Maharashtra, 2 more centers, Dhammakhet in Hyderabad in 1976 and Dhammathali in Jaipur in 1977 came up.
जो धम्मथली में जो मेन इन्वॉल्व थे वो राम सिंह जी थे। उनकी एफर्ट की वजह से दिस लैंड वाज अलॉटेड पहाड़ियों के बीच में। इट वाज ए फॉरेस्ट लैंड। पहला कोर्स था, इट वाज इन जंगल, सारे टेंट्स में था। इवन द धम्मा हॉल वाज इन अ टेंट, किचन एवरीथिंग वाज इन अ टेंट। और उस वक्त जो इलाइट ऑफ द सिटी था वो भी उसमें बैठा हुआ था, with all that no facilities, nothing, even no fence in summer. Everybody didn't mind all that thing.
मेरे ससुर रतिलाल भाई मंजी भाई मेहता है। देखा कि ये तो बहुत ही ऊंची साधना है, तो उन्होंने कहा गुरुजी को, आप हैदराबाद में जो हमारी ज़मीन है उसमें से हम थोड़ी सी आपको लैंड है डोनेट करना चाहते हैं, वहाँ पे आप आश्रम बांधिए।
पूज्य गुरुजी का पहला शिविर जब हैदराबाद में लगा
तो श्री रतिलाल मेहता की फैक्ट्री में लगवाया।
वहाँ पे उन्होंने एक अपने लिए कुटिया बनाई थी और साधना के लिए वो वहाँ पे चले जाते थे। तभी गुरुजी ने कहा, देखो बूढ़े बाबा, आपको ये कुटिया का बहुत मोह है, आप अगर इसको छोड़ेंगे तो ही मैं आऊँगा। तो उन्होंने कहा कि ठीक है भाई, आप वो बोलो तो मैं ये भी छोड़ दूँ।
The start of the new centers also enabled a stricter code of conduct. Noble silence was implemented fully. Goenka ji took great care that no creature would be killed or ordered to be killed in Dhamma land. Most importantly, the courses were running entirely on the voluntary donations of old students.
It was pinching to me that I take charges from the students, and there was no other way.
And it is to keep the technique pure. By taking donation from our students, we are obliging them. When a student gives, he gives out of a volition that Dhamma should spread. And with that volition, he can't come and boss. He will be very happy to come and serve only. So the tradition is maintained in its pristine purity just because the donation is received as symbol of gratitude from the student to the tradition of Dhamma.
Goenka ji insisted that the highest principles were followed in the organization and administration of these centers.
In 76, when Dhammagiri started, the construction of his room had taken place along with the other necessary units, and there wasn't enough money to pay the contractor. So Goenka ji didn't use his own residence because it hadn't been paid for. He was living in the back of D dormitory with no toilet and an outside urinal for him. Now, one morning, I happened to be down at the men's toilet at about, for some reason, I was down there about 3:30. And here's Guruji standing outside the Western toilet. There was one Western toilet down there on the men's side. And I'm thinking, what's Guruji doing down here so early, right? I go about my business. Next thing you know, Mataji comes out of the toilet. He was guarding the door for her. They didn't have a toilet in their room. They were using the only Western toilet on the compound down there in the men's toilet block.
और फिर रिक्वेस्ट किया कि आप बोलो तो हम थोड़ा पैसा इकट्ठा करें। हम कर सकते हैं। आप हम जल्द बोला कभी बोलना मत। पैसा इकट्ठा करने का जो बोलेगा तो धर्म खोएगा, फिर तेरे को धर्म नहीं मिलेगा। जिधर पैसा आता है उधर पैसे का वर्चस्व रहता है। जो ज्यादा पैसा लाता है उसके तरफ गुरु की नजर अच्छी जाती है, नहीं लाते बिल्कुल भूल जाना। जैसा तुम्हारे में धर्म बढ़ेगा, हमेरे में धर्म बढ़ेगा, पैसा आते ही जाएगा, अपने को लेने को नहीं जाना पड़ेगा। और देख इधर तो जंगल था, इतना सब हो गया, मांगे बिना किसने दिया तब हुआ ना, नहीं तो कैसा होता है। तो कभी नहीं मांगना, भूल चूक से कभी भी धर्म के लिए पैसा मांगने को मत जाना।
तो डोनेशन आए वो उसी चीज़ में जिसके लिए आया उसी पर यूज़ होना चाहिए, या फिर वो एक्सेस है तो दूसरा एक्सपेंशन वगैरह में कहीं भी यूज़ हो। उसका मिसयूज़ नहीं होना चाहिए। वो ऐसे नहीं है कि ट्रस्ट का काम है तो रुपये की जगह ₹1.25 लगा दो, कोई चेकिंग नहीं करें।
गुरुजी ने बताया कि फल होगा तो टोकरी में रख दो, साधक ले जाएगा और उसका डोनेशन बॉक्स बाजू में रख दो, कभी फल बेचना नहीं।
After the spread of Dhamma in India for a decade, Goenka ji conducted his first international course in France, followed by numerous courses in Europe, Canada, and USA. Long before Goenka ji's visits, roots of Dhamma were already getting established there. Old students were vigorously spreading Dhamma through short courses, talks, etc.
It was a non-center course, very small place, but very expensive. Only 40 people could sit. But after the course, when I gave Dana, I asked how much rent it is. And then she said, $2,000 a month. I said, my goodness, who pays? A few old foreigners who could at that time teach English. They pull together every month, 5 courses a year only.
Before establishment of permanent centers, Dhamma houses were started in various cities for group sittings and to carry out different outreach programs. In Oak Tree Dhamma House in UK, old students formed a Dhamma community to strengthen their practice and to inspire others to walk on the path.
It was the contact address for Vipassana in the UK at that time. People from all over the world came through there and stayed weeks there at a time. We lived a communal, shared life together. We meditated morning and evening together. We had a lovely meditation room upstairs. We meditated. We were all young people and just starting out in Dhamma, so we organising the courses that happened in the UK. Goenka came and visited the house.
Till 1979, Goenka was not able to travel outside India due to the restrictions on his Burmese passport. During this time, he kept on encouraging few other students of Sayaji U Ba Khin to conduct courses outside India.
Mr. Hubbard and John Coleman and Mrs. Dennison learned a lot from him, and they kind of organized their courses much more on the way he did things, because they realized that he had kind of figured out a system for handling large numbers of students, and they followed pretty much how he did it.
For various reasons, these experiments were not successful, and the demand for courses was ever growing. By 1981, Goenka was at a watershed. At this time, Goenka decided to follow the footsteps of his teacher and authorized few of his well-established students to teach Vipassana on his behalf. By early 1982, initial 8 assistant teachers had been appointed to conduct courses as Goenka's representatives. Shortly after their appointment, the first 80-led course was conducted by Mr. Bill Hart in March 1982 in Burmese Vihara, Bodh Gaya, India.
So before I left Dhammagiri, they did give me a plastic bag that was full with all sorts of different tapes of whatever was available. And at that time, they had recorded all his discourses, and on self-courses, we used to play Anapana Vipassana Metta. And I guess they had recorded the instructions throughout the day as well, and the morning chanting, of course. We didn't have the meditation hall. There was a group of Burmese pilgrims using the meditation hall, what was, I think, the library?
Upstairs?
Yes. So we weren't that many people. We crowded into the room where Goenka had done his self-courses for about 10 years. And that was our meditation hall. And the first day I played all the different tapes, and we got to the evening discourse, and the students had not yet all run away. They were still there. And the discourse ended, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, now just one sitting, and then it will finish. So they came back into the hall after the break, and I pressed the button on the tape player for the evening instructions. Nothing there. And I was completely unprepared. And Goenka had just met with the very first assistant teachers and had emphasized to them that when the tapes break down, you have to be able to jump in on a moment's notice. So I managed to figure out what I thought was the instruction for day one evening, and I gave the instruction. And then silence, and they continued meditating, and the time is passing. And then I'm thinking to myself, what happens at 9 o'clock? How do I get them out of the hall? And I guess I wasn't smart enough just to think at 9 o'clock I could say, okay, take rest. I thought I have to do what Goenka does, which is chant Bhavatu Sabba Mangalam.
The newly launched AT program opened the doors wider for the spread of Dhamma. To support the AT program, Systematic capturing of Goenkaji's wonderful presentation was required. It was not an easy task, as Goenkaji insisted that it be recorded live. As always, Dhamma helped. Someone stepped up to fulfill the need.
टीचिंग का फॉर्मेट तो वही है जो पहले था, ओरिजिनली था। उसका जो प्रेजेंटेशन जो आज वीडियो और ऑडियो से जो है, उसकी शुरुआत थॉमस ने की। गुरुजी के साथ छाया की तरह रख के और उसने सब टेप्स शुरू की। और आज का जो फॉर्मेट है वो उस हिसाब से चल रहा है जो थॉमस ने शुरू किया।
Bill was going to go back and teach a course at the Burmese Vihara in Gaya. And I noticed he had a few little tapes. He had a Vipassana tape and an Anapana tape and maybe some discourses or something, but they were all just in a little brown paper bag. So I remember thinking, seeing Bill Hart sitting there waiting for his train, that how terrifying that must be for him to go and represent his teacher for the first time. Anybody has represented our teacher, and he had nothing but just a little brown bag full of a few tapes, and the rest of it he had to do himself. And I just imagine how terrifying that was.
गुरुजी से पहले हर स्टेज पे he took guidance from गुरुजी.
And I had some experience in audio and video, and so I tried to talk to Goenka about allowing me to record his course in the summer when he came to the U.S. And at first he said no. He said no, that would be much too distracting for the students, somebody running around and making all these distractions during the course and so forth. So I promised him that I would be quiet as a little mouse.
Through Mr. Thomas Chrisman's dedicated efforts from 1982 to 86, a complete set of Goenkaji's teaching became available to the assistant teachers. Once available, Goenkaji instructed that for all time to come and at all places, these recordings should be used to keep the teaching and tradition unchanged.
And here's Goenkaji coming to India from Burma with the mission of getting Dhamma established in India so it could spread around the world. How else was it going to spread around the world unless the people who were here practicing were going to start conducting courses? And then, fortunately, Thomas started recording, so we didn't have to know very much.
फॉर्मेट एक ही है, टाइमिंग एक ही है, तो हर आदमी को मालूम है कि उस टाइम क्या होने वाला है. That makes things much easier. और मेरे ख्याल से this is a unique example. मेरे ख्याल से दूसरा एग्जाम्पल नहीं है कि the courses are held in such a way that the teaching cannot change. अगर लाइव होता, कितना भी काबिल आदमी होता, वो या तो कुछ ऐड करता या सब्ट्रैक्ट करता, and the whole meaning changes. तो वो एक लॉन्गर टिक सकेगा, मुझे ऐसा लगता है, because of this.
By using recordings, it prevented the personality of the AT from getting involved with the presentation. Certainly the AT has a role to play in answering the students' questions, but the constraint on having to rely on Goenkaji's wonderful presentation and obviously discourses, that it relegated the AT to a position where his personality and ego didn't get inflamed.
These recordings ensured that Goenkaji's precise instructions, analogies, dohas and stories would keep on captivating and inspiring generations of students.
One feels so happy. I'm 20 years old. Birthday party, big celebration. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Poor chap doesn't understand. He's 20 years nearer his graveyard. Not happy. This does not mean that whenever your birthday comes, you start crying. I am nearer 1 year to my. Oh no, Dhamma does not teach you to cry. You understand the reality. This is the fact.
Goenkaji was very particular not to encourage any kind of gurudom. He himself preferred to be called a Kalyan Mitra, a friend focused on others' welfare. This was a message for the future generations as well. Not to take the teacher status too seriously. and be a mere friend.
Buddha was so clear that I cannot liberate you. You have to liberate yourself. I can only show you the path. If Buddha cannot liberate anybody, who can liberate? Each individual has to work one's own salvation. Someone can show the path, that's all. So whenever in any teaching of Dhamma, the teacher says that I will liberate you, there is something wrong. And for future also, I keep on telling my students, if the teacher starts making this a business for one's livelihood, then the Dhamma will get spoiled. Dhamme nana vanikang chare. Don't make Dhamma a commercial item. So these two things one has to take care in future also.
While designing the AT program, Goenka ji incorporated the code of conduct for assistant teachers, upholding the highest principles in this tradition to maintain the purity of the technique.
Well, he was particularly concerned about three issues. One was to do with the golden rule, if you like, that teachers of Dhamma should never receive any kind of financial gain, financial remuneration. The second point was that the teaching should always be non-sectarian. It shouldn't have anything to do with any organized religion, including Buddhism. It should always be presented in a very non-sectarian. He was also very concerned that the courses should be run on a dana basis. There should never be any kind of charges made for the teaching. And these were golden guidelines he had received from Sayagyi, and this was the tradition coming down through the centuries.
तो हमको गुरुजी ने क्या सिखाया कि अगर साधक, जब हम गुरु टीचर बने तो साधक आपको पेट सौगात दे तो लेना नहीं है, पर अगर उनको चोट पर पहुंचती है लेना पड़े तो लो। वो अगर चीज़ सेंटर को काम आए तो सेंटर को दे दो, पर सेंटर को काम की नहीं आपको रखना पड़ता है तो आप इसके अंदाजित इसकी जितनी कीमत हो इससे थोड़ी ज़्यादा भी आप दान कर दें। तो हमको ये सिखाया उन्होंने धर्म में कैसे जीना, तृष्णा बिल्कुल नहीं, अपने धर्म का सेवा के बदले में कोई भौतिक लाभ नहीं। मैं जो सिखाता हूँ इस तरह सिखाती हूँ ना कि उनको अच्छा लगता है, उनकी मुझे सिखाती हूँ। तो इस तरह से धीरे धीरे दूसरों को अच्छा लगे ऐसा नहीं, जो सिखाना है वो प्यार के लिए नहीं, वो वाह के लिए नहीं, प्रशंसा के लिए नहीं, ऐसे धीरे धीरे ऐसे जो प्रसंग है ना तो धर्म के जो आदर्श थे वो इस तरह से हमें सिखाते जाते थे।
Goenka ji always emphasized that if one wants to grow in Dhamma, one needs to serve Dhamma selflessly and tirelessly. Some of such noble servers were chosen by Goenka ji as the first assistant teachers.
Could do 1 course, 2 courses, 3 courses, 5 courses, no problem. And serving also, sitting, like he says, was so important to sit there, hear people asking the questions, see Goenka talking seriously, see how he handled people, some people he was stern, some people he was very soft, some people he would be shouting and, wow, what happened? Shouting at us sometimes. So all these years of experience, just really gelled into, wow, yes, this is what I have to do.
मैं 30 days का कोर्स खत्म ही किया था, बोला तुम सर्व करो, मतलब कि जहाँ खाना खाने आते हैं साधक 10 दिन के, तो उनको खाना सर्व करो। तो समझ में आया कि कितनी प्रॉब्लम आती है। खाने के लिए आता है पर हम उनके सामने खड़े हैं तो हम कैसे फेस करते हैं उसको, तो हमको क्या तकलीफ होती है। तो ऐसे कई इंसिडेंसेस जब समझ में आए तब मालूम पड़ा कि क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, क्या किस चीज से गलत हो सकता है, किस चीज का ध्यान रखना चाहिए।
It wasn't like we went from 0 to 100. I mean, we'd been there and seen Goenka Ji in many different situations, how he handled them so confidently. And we'd managed, we'd cooked, we'd built, we'd helped look for centers, so do a lot of jobs. So, it wasn't like we were coming in absolutely fresh.
सेवा ही से महत्व की है और काम नहीं। पहले तो ये कि एटी बनना, हमारे मन में भाव आया कि मैं एटी बनूं, तो सेवा नहीं है, उसको पद का बुक है तर्प्या, एक शब्द दिया आपने, उपकारी मैंने पहल करना, और कुछ नहीं। कोई सेवा करे, अरे मैं भी सेवा करूँ, मैं भी सेवा करूँ, मैं टीचर बन के सेवा करूँ वो नहीं, मैं भी सेवा करूँ, बस किस लिए मेरा प्रशंसा होगी मेरी, कि मुझे कुछ लाभ होगा, वो कुछ मन में ना आए, बस मुझे सेवा करनी है, एक भाव जागना चाहिए, तो वो ही लायक होते हैं सेवा करने के लिए और एक ही बनने के लिए। बाकी मैं एक ही बनूँ और मैं ये सेवा करूँ, तो वो उसके अंदर अहम भाव है, तो वो लायक नहीं होता है।
उनका यही था कि टीचर होने के नाते उनको मन में करुणा होना चाहिए, करुणा होना चाहिए, जो आया है उसको लाभ हो। से दुखी तो सभी है संसार में, कौन सुखी है, तो करुणा विशेष गुरु जी कहते थे कि टीचर के मन में करुणा होना चाहिए, और उसके प्रात में उसके सहन शक्ति, उसे अब नहीं समझ आता फिर समझेगा, फिर समझेगा, ये नहीं कि नहीं होगा आप इसको छोड़ दो, ये नहीं होना चाहिए।
These Dhamma messengers are spreading the technique of Vipassana for the benefit of many, for the welfare of many.
The big difference was that he said, you are assisting, you are assistant teachers. So there's the material, we are not teaching, we are just trying to not obstruct the Dhamma to get there. Obviously he can't push all the buttons himself, he can't be everywhere at the same time.
We have the good fortune to jump on that wheel. You know, we need it a lot more than it needs us. You know, and for Goenka Ji to give us that opportunity to help him, he felt that he was still just assisting Sayagyi. Even now, I mean, when you speak to him now, everything he's saying is, this is because of Sayagyi. You know, he's just helping Sayagyi, we're just helping him.
I said to him, what do you remember of Sayagyi U Ba Khin? And he didn't reply very much with any words, but I remember he just, his eyes rolled back inside themselves, and he went into a sort of a reverie of remembrance of U Ba Khin, and you could, looking in his eyes at that time and seeing them kind of turned inward with a reverential, blissful feeling of his teacher. And somehow also that connected up, you know, having that like an opening into Goenka Ji's mind, you know, was like a connection to all the line of teachers. And
so you know, there was a story that somebody had asked Sayagyi to compare himself to the Buddha. Sayagyi said, if the Buddha was the entire range of the Himalayas, I'm not even a grain of sand to the Himalayas. And then they asked Guruji to do the same thing, and he said, I'm not even a shadow to that grain of sand. So if you think of all of us sitting here, as hard as it is and as incapable as we may feel, we're very lucky.